guys, it's Megan. Welcome back to another video. Today we are not in the library. We're in my in-laws' house filming a video, but I'm going to show you guys the 4 books that I've already DNFed halfway through. In fact, it was even less than halfway through, like a third of the way through January, like in the first 10 days of the year. I DNFed 4 books. So I thought I'd just do a quick little video on like why I'm DNFing so much right off the bat because, well, I don't even know why I am, but let's analyze it and see if we can figure it out. So I'm going to go in order of the one I read the least of to the one I read the most of, which was almost all of it. But the first one that well, not the first one I DNF'd, but the one that I read the least of, I think I only read 18 pages of Babel by R.F. Kuang. This thing is massive. The audiobook's like 20 some hours long, I think. The pages are, I mean, there's a lot of words per page in this thing. I'm not gonna go through like what this book's about because I feel like a lot of people already know because it has been so popular. And I think that was one of the problems. It was overhyped. And I don't think R.F. Kuang's writing is as good as I thought it was gonna be. It's very academic, very formal. Obviously this girl's really smart. She's like a PhD student pursuing her PhD in East European languages and literatures at Yale. She's clearly very intelligent. She's clearly very well read. She knows a lot of the history, but this is supposed to be a fantasy novel and it's really not. It's really, you know, it's trying to comment on all these other things. It says it's, you know, an organization that's dedicated to stopping imperial expansion. But, you know, so the fantasy part just doesn't really make any sense in there. And I don't know, I just wasn't having fun with it. It is written almost more like a classic, which is why I thought I would enjoy it, honestly. But from what I've heard, like Leanna from Leanna's Library, me and her, we usually seem to be on the same page, she and I. And so when she talked about this book and had like a huge long rant review about how bad this book was, and how just boring and just, it's not interesting and the characters aren't good, like everything about it's bad, she says. And I decided, why waste my time with reading it, especially when it's huge? So then I thought, well, I'll just wait and listen to the audiobook because at least I won't have to waste my time physically, but because I don't have the audiobook yet. But then I thought, no, I don't want to waste my time with that either, not when apparently it's not really that good. So I think I'm mostly going to give up on R.F. Kuang since I did not really like the Poppy War trilogy and wound up DNFing it too. So the book I read the next most of, which was like maybe 30%-ish, yeah, about 30%, or maybe even a little less, is The Lies of Clamora by Scott Lynch. This book is smelly, first of all. That has nothing to do with why I didn't like it, but clearly it was a library book that was in a house that had a lot of smoke in it. But I thought this was going to be great because it's in a fantasy setting, but it's supposed to be similar to Ocean's 11 because it is a heist story, and I love that kind of thing. And people were saying, in fact, Patrick Rothfuss, who wrote Name of the Wind, on his Goodreads, he said that this book was technically better than Name of the Wind because he's like, oh yeah, you know, mine, like the first 100 pages in, we're just now getting to like the first actual story. Like it's all just been set up and now we're seeing like quotes, you know, flashback or whatever. He's like, in this one, 100 pages in, we're already right in the middle of the heist and blah, blah, blah. Well, I got to over 100 pages in and I didn't know what was going on. I was confused. Maybe I'm not smart enough to read this book. So many people on Goodreads have said that when they go back and read it a second time, like even if they DNF'd it the first time, they go back and try again and it's so good the second time. So maybe I'll have to try it again in the future. I probably will because it's supposed to be funny. It says it's wickedly enjoyable because the characters are not, you know, I think they're kind of like morally gray. Obviously, they're like con men, kind of. I think they're kind of like Robin Hoods, though, that like steal from the rich and that kind of thing. So all of that sounds like something I would love. It says it's swashbuckling. It's 1 part Mission Impossible, 1 part swashbuckler. All that sounds amazing, but I was bored out of my mind. Like, I didn't even know what was happening. I was not connected to the characters in any way, shape, or form. It kind of bounced back and forth between the past and the present, and I was just confused. But I was also listening to the audiobook and only vaguely reading physically. So maybe I'll try it again physically, although I'm really scared to now. It is a trilogy, so it'd be a lot to commit to, but I hear that it gets even better and better, and George R.R. Martin blurbed it, so I might give this one another try at some point. Our third out of 4 books is the one that I read or right about half, I think maybe even a little more than half, is Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune. So I loved House in the Cerulean Sea. Year before last, it was such a surprise hit because I know everybody loved it, but I didn't think I would because it was like, you know, had serious, not really serious themes, but you know, it wasn't just pure fantasy and it was about found family and all this, but it turns out it was really good. It had aspects of like Harry Potter, aspects of 1984, the Umbrella Academy. I think it was compared to that at one point. And so I actually really loved it. One of the characters, Lucy, if you've read that book, you know Lucy, and he is like the best character ever. So yeah, there was a lot to love about that book. And I think I gave it 4 stars. So I was pretty excited about this one. I didn't know if I was gonna read it though because I was like, they say it's sad. I'm not really into like sad books. Honestly, it was just boring. The setting should have been more whimsical than it is because it's in a tea shop where like spirits are passing through for the afterlife. I wanted it to be whimsical with the tea shop, but it really was. I wanted descriptions of things and to be more atmospheric, and it wasn't. And there just wasn't enough characters. And when the main character is dead and can only interact with so many other characters, it just wasn't very interesting. The romance was kind of, I don't know, forced. Not really forced, but like it just happened too quickly. The main character is super unlikable and is not getting any more likable at halfway through. Whereas in House in the Cerulean Sea, the main character becomes relatively likable more right off the bat. I felt like this one, he really is just like Scrooge, but he's not really getting any better. So I don't know why anybody would fall in love with him. Anyway, I DNF'd it because it just wasn't very fun. The final book that I've DNF'd, but I'm counting it as having read it because I then skimmed the remainder. But technically I did not actually read the last like little chunk. I read like 90% of this book, which tells you how bad it must have been that I could not power through the last 10%. And I just kept hoping beyond hope it would get better, and then it kept getting progressively worse and weirder until the point that I have no clue what was happening in this book. This book is one I thought would be 5 stars for me because it's a book about books. It sounded whimsical and fun. And I thought it would be similar to the City of Dreaming books, which I absolutely loved. However, it was not. And that is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. Everybody says that there's a certain audience for this book. I don't know what audience would like this book. And if you like this book, maybe explain why. I guess the writing is very lyrical, but like, that doesn't matter when you don't understand anything that's happening. Like, I don't know, this book was so confusing and literally nothing was happening. It was almost like a stream of consciousness it was some sort of like thought exercise. I don't know. I had also tried The Night Circus by this author maybe 10 years ago before I even knew what booktube was. I didn't know what DNFing was, but I just knew that I didn't like it after like 50 pages and I stopped. Well, I powered through this thing even though it's so long. It's like 500 pages or more. And I got over 400 of them in, and oh my gosh, it was all over the place. Like, this book makes absolutely no sense, and it tries to seem smart, and I feel like I've heard so many booktubers that I love say things like, I'm just not smart enough to read this book. I don't think that's the case. It's not that we're not smart enough to read this book, it's just this book is not that smart. That's not the problem, it's just bad. So I'll have to do a whole like review or something of this one, but I don't think I'll ever try another Erin Morgenstern book ever again. So those are 4 books I read that I DNF'd almost immediately. I don't think I'll ever try Babel again. I think I will try Liza La Clamora again. Definitely no for Under the Whispering Door, and definitely no for The Starless Sea. So I'm just on a roll with DNFing. I also DNF'd The Wolf by Leo Carew like at the very end of December, so that can kind of counts too. Honestly, I'll go ahead and tell you guys, I was hoping to read some of these books for a video where I was going to read some of my booktubers' favorite books. I was going to read The Wolf because of Leanna from Leanna's library. I was going to read The Starless Sea for Brittany from Books with Brittany, and I was going to read the Liza La Clamora for actually a couple different booktubers. Peruse Project, Reagan loves it there, Leanna, she loves it, Murphy from Murphy Napier loves it. So I was like, okay, I'll read some of my booktubers' favorite books and I'll do a vlog of me reading them. I've DNF'd 3 of them. I DNF'd all 3 of those books. So I don't think that's not gonna be a successful video, so I'm just gonna forgo that idea. Apparently I do not like those booktubers' books, and maybe I need to search for booktubers that I do enjoy their favorite books. I don't know, can I even trust them now? This is a really random video, but I just had to point out how many books I've DNF'd already. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye.